You're traveling through the unknown, a journey beyond the corners of reality, where the shadows whisper and the chill runs deep. Welcome to the dimension where your deepest fears are given form. This is The Midnight Mystery.
Welcome to The Midnight Mystery. Today's episode is called We Were Trapped Within the Time Loop Motel. In each episode, we delve into the shadowed corners of our existence, bringing you tales of the eerie, the uncanny, and the downright terrifying. From the realms of the supernatural to the depths of the human psyche, no stone is left unturned, no dark secret left hidden. As the clock once again draws near midnight, prepare to embark on another adventure into the uncanny, the eerie, the horrifying, the midnight mystery.
The engine sputtered, died, and then there was just the echoing silence of the desolate highway. Susan turned to me, a veil of worry clouding her hazel eyes. "Richard, what happened?" "I don't know," I muttered, turning the ignition key repeatedly. The car didn't budge. With a resigned sigh, I got out, popping open the hood to have a look. There was no smoke, no evident damage. I wasn't a mechanic by any means, but everything looked normal. "It might be something minor," Susan offered optimistically, peering over the seat. "But we need a place to stay." I scanned our surroundings. The dense fog made it hard to see, but my eyes landed on a faded neon sign just a few yards away. *Motel*. It looked old, run down, and more than a bit creepy, but we didn't have much of a choice. "It's just for one night," I said, trying to reassure Susan as we grabbed our bags and made our way to the motel. Stepping inside, it felt like we'd been transported back in time. The walls were adorned with faded wallpaper, the wooden floor creaked beneath our feet, and the musty smell of old books lingered in the air. Vintage furniture filled the small lobby, with a gramophone playing an eerily calm tune. It all seemed untouched by modernity. A bell sat on the reception desk. I tapped it hesitantly. Moments later, the back door swung open to reveal a man. His face was lined with age, but his eyes sparkled with an unsettling cheerfulness. "Ah, guests. How wonderful," he exclaimed. "Hi, our car broke down," I began, "and we need a room for the night." Of course," he said, drawing out a thick ledger. As he scribbled something down, I noticed he was using an old fountain pen. "Room 13, he declared, handing us an old rusty key. Susan raised an eyebrow. "Isn't 13 considered unlucky?" The receptionist just chuckled. "Superstitions, my dear. Here, it's just another room." We thanked him and made our way to room 13. The hallway was dimly lit, with sconces flickering uncertainly as we walked. The room itself was spacious, but felt heavy with the weight of the past. An ornate mirror hung on one wall, its glass murky and smeared. The bed was large, its covers slightly out of place. "I don't know about this place, Richard," Susan murmured, her arms wrapped around herself as if seeking warmth. "It's just one night, Sue. We'll be out of here in the morning," I said, offering her a comforting smile. She sighed. "Okay, but let's keep the lights on, yeah?" That night was, without a doubt, one of the longest of my life. We lay in bed trying to sleep, but the motel seemed alive with strange noises. The wind howled, causing the windows to bang sporadically. Every time I'd start drifting off, a new noise would startle me awake. At one point, a dark shadow passed by our window, even though we were on the second floor. Around midnight, Susan whispered, "Do you feel that? It feels like we're being watched." I wanted to dismiss her fears, but the truth was, I felt it too. An oppressive weight, as if unseen eyes were constantly on us. Trying to be the protective boyfriend, I got up and checked the room, peering under the bed and inside the closet. Nothing. "It's just our minds playing tricks," I murmured, crawling back beside her. But as the night wore on, the feeling only intensified. At one point, Susan gripped my hand, her nails digging into my skin. "Richard, look," she whispered, pointing towards the mirror. I squinted in the dim light. Our reflection was there, but behind us stood a shadowy figure, its form indistinct but undeniably present. My heart raced, but when I turned to look, there was no one in the room. "We need to leave," I said urgently. Susan nodded, her face pale. But as we began to pack, the room's door creaked open slowly. We froze. The corridor outside was empty. Desperate to leave, we hurriedly grabbed our bags and dashed to the reception. But it was deserted, the cheerful receptionist nowhere in sight. It was only when we reached the car, breathing heavily from our mad dash, that we realized the worst part. The night was still young. It wasn't dawn yet. We had endured all those horrors, and the night was far from over. "We can't go back in there," Susan said, her voice trembling. I nodded, pulling her close. "We won't. We'll stay in the car until morning." As the night dragged on, every shadow seemed to move. Every gust of wind sounded like a whisper. We held on to each other, praying for dawn. We were trapped, surrounded by the unknown, in a place that seemed to defy time and logic. It was clear that the motel wasn't just a building. It was a trap, a maze of fear. And we were its latest victims. As the first rays of dawn timidly peeked over the horizon, an overwhelming sense of relief washed over us. The night, with its torrent of terrors, was finally behind us. Or so we thought. Exhausted and rattled, we decided to make a quick exit from the motel. We just wanted to get as far away from that nightmarish place as possible. However, as we approached the reception, a wave of déjà vu struck me. The same elderly receptionist greeted us with an eerily familiar sparkle in his eyes. "Ah, guests, how wonderful," he exclaimed with unsettling enthusiasm. A chill ran down my spine. This was exactly how our conversation had unfolded the previous day. Confused, I glanced at Susan, who seemed just as perturbed. We've already checked in," I stammered. "We're actually checking out." The receptionist chuckled benignly, handing over the key to room 13 once again. "Room 13, enjoy your stay." We left the reception, thoughts whirling in confusion. It felt as though reality itself was warping around us. Regardless, we decided to leave that accursed place. But as we drove away, the car suddenly sputtered and came to a stop, right back at the entrance of the motel. "We're caught in something," Susan whispered, a grim realization etching across her face. Something unnatural. Desperation began to claw at the edges of my sanity. With a heavy sigh, we found ourselves back in room 13. Night fell, and with it returned the symphony of horror, the shadows, the whispers, the chilling feeling of being watched. Day after relentless day, the cycle repeated. Every morning we'd wake up to the same receptionist, the same musty room. And every night, the horrors would return with a vengeance, each more terrifying than the last. On one such repetition, I decided to confront the receptionist. "Why is this happening? What is this place?" I demanded. He looked at me, his eyes flickering with an unfathomable emotion. "This place is what you make of it," he said cryptically. I tried different tactics to break the loop. We attempted to leave the motel on foot, only to find ourselves walking in never-ending circles, always returning to the starting point. We tried staying awake all night, hoping to avoid the terrors, but they manifested in other ways, plaguing our waking moments with disturbing visions. "Richard, we need to find a way out," Susan pleaded one grim morning. Her eyes were filled with a despair that mirrored my own. "I know, Sue," I said, feeling a crushing weight on my chest. "I'm trying to think, trying to understand what's happening." As each loop passed, the terrifying occurrences began to escalate. Gruesome apparitions started to haunt us, figures lurking just beyond the periphery of our vision, whispers growing louder, and shadows becoming more menacing. In one particularly horrifying loop, I found myself alone in the room, blood smeared across the walls, and the suffocating stench of death lingering in the air. "Susan!" I called out, my voice echoing through the emptiness. But she was nowhere to be found. It felt as if the motel itself was feeding off our fear, amplifying it, manipulating it. Time started to lose meaning. The boundaries between day and night blurred. Reality itself seemed like a thin veil, ready to tear away at any moment. Conversations with Susan began to revolve around escape plans, every failed attempt only adding to our desolation. "Maybe there's something we need to do, something specific to break the cycle," Susan suggested one despair-filled night. "I've tried everything I can think of," I confessed, feeling hopelessly trapped. "But it feels like we're missing something crucial." Each night, the darkness seemed to grow denser, the shadows more suffocating. We would find cryptic messages scrawled on the walls, the words twisting our minds into realms of incomprehensible terror. During what felt like the 100th loop, an unbearable sense of loss overwhelmed me. I could see the same sentiment reflected in Susan's hollow eyes. We were prisoners, tormented by an unseen force, bound to relive our nightmares for eternity. Driven to the brink, I began to question everything. our reality, our presence in this forsaken motel, and the very fabric of existence itself. What if there was no escape from this torturous repetition? What if our lives were destined to unravel in this unending spiral of terror? I held Susan, feeling the warmth of her body against the numbing coldness of our surroundings. "We'll find a way out, Sue. We have to," I whispered, holding back the tears that threatened to fall. But the darkness seemed to be closing in on us, leaving us with nothing but the icy grip of fear and despair. A numbing silence filled the room, an unbearable stillness that seemed to drown out the very essence of life. I looked around frantically, realizing with a gut-wrenching drop in my stomach that Susan was gone. The room, which had been a theater of relentless horrors, now seemed even more desolate and sinister without her presence. "Susan?" I called, my voice echoing through the forlorn walls of the motel. There was no response. I searched the room, the bathroom, even under the bed, hoping that it was just another twisted game of the never-ending nightmare. But she was nowhere to be found. The cycles continued, a relentless march of time that seemed to mock my despair. The nights were longer, filled with torturous visions and echoes of Susan's laughter, which now seemed to haunt the corners of the grim room. Shadows whispered her name, and the winds carried echoes of her screams. "I didn't protect her," I whispered to the empty room, guilt gnawing at the edges of my shattered sanity. "Susan, where are you?" Desperation clawed at my mind, each loop pulling me further into the abyss of madness. I started seeing horrifying visions, walls closing in, shadows lurking with menacing intent, and blood-curdling screams that seemed to emanate from the very walls of the motel. "Why is this happening?" I shouted at the indifferent walls, tears of hopelessness blurring my vision. "Is this my fault?" In the merciless grip of another night, a revelation dawned, hitting me like a violent storm. Scenes began to unravel in the murky reflections of the mirror, scenes that bore the weight of a grim reality. There, in the haunting clarity of the cursed room, I saw myself, consumed by a blind rage, my hands stained with Susan's blood. No, this can't be," I mumbled, recoiling in horror. But the mirror didn't lie. It showed me the monster that I was. Susan's disappearance, the relentless loops, the motel that seemed like purgatory. It all began to make a horrifying sense. I was trapped in a manifestation of my guilt and insanity, the motel a prison forged by my mind, and Susan a ghost of my merciless deed. She had never been here. She was a tormenting memory, a fragment of a life I had stolen in a fit of jealous rage. The receptionist's words echoed in my mind, a cryptic puzzle finally making cruel sense. "This place is what you make of it." It was my purgatory, a labyrinth of horror where I was condemned to relive the consequences of my unforgivable crime. The terror, the guilt, the loss. It was a punishment, an eternal sentence to face the darkness of my soul. "I'm so sorry, Susan," I whispered, tears flowing down my face. But there was no one there to hear my apology, no one there to absolve my sins. I was left alone, haunted by the ghost of my actions, condemned to wander the corridors of despair forever. The cycles continued, an unending theater of my mind's darkest plays. Each loop was a reminder, a torturous replay of the love I had lost and the life I had mercilessly taken. The motel, with its decaying walls and haunted shadows, was a reflection of my internal chaos, a place where time and redemption remained forever out of reach. In the suffocating grip of this revelation, time lost meaning, and reality became a cruel mirage. The days melded into nights, and the nights bled into days, each moment echoing with the horrors of my own making. I was left in this endless loop, a prisoner of my own conscience, sentenced to endure the relentless torture of my darkest fears. And so, the motel remained, a timeless relic in the desolate vastness, hiding within its haunted walls the twisted tale of love lost and a soul condemned. Its rooms echoed with the remnants of tormented souls, and its corridors whispered the grim tales of the darkness that lurks within the human heart.
I hope you enjoyed our episode. I'd like to extend a heartfelt thanks to you, our brave listeners. Your presence in this shared journey into the unknown is what fuels our stories. Your fascination is our motivation. Did this episode send chills down your spine? Then leave your comments, your thoughts and theories, your own midnight mysteries. Your feedback is the beacon that guides us through the uncharted territories of our stories. And if you haven't already, remember to subscribe to our channel. By joining the Midnight Mystery family, you won't miss out on a single chilling tale. As a subscriber, You'll be the first to know when a new episode lurks around the corner, ready to pull you back into the shadowy depths of the unknown. This is the Midnight Mystery signing off, leaving you with a simple reminder. When the clock strikes 12, fear the silence, for that's when our tales come to life. Good night, Midnight listeners. And remember, not all who wander into the dark are lost.